Absolutely. Small businesses and small
All
industries.
right, folks, gentlemen, be
Electronic.
seated or whatever.
You're gonna do.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the Londonderry Town Council meeting for December 16th, 2019. The council apologizes for being late. We were in a meeting upstairs with our attorney, and we do apologize. Everyone, please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Ladies and gentlemen, please remain standing. It is our tradition here at the Londonderry Town Council meeting to honor all those who serve us here and abroad in the military, as well as all those first responders who take care of our community and see to it every day that the Londonderry citizens are safe. Thank you, folks. Pray for their safety. All right, folks, we start with public comment. I'm going to start off with the police department. They have been in an awards ceremony across the way. Unfortunately, the council can only attend about half of it, but it's nice to hear all the stories of the things that go on in the community and how we're able to provide help to all those folks. So, Chief, floor is yours.
Good evening, and thank you for this opportunity. I'm Bill Hart. I'm the police chief, and I just wanted to introduce the command staff. Captain Patrick Cheatham, who commands Services Division, Captain Kim Bernard, who commands Operations, and Captain Chris Gandia of the Manchester Airport Division. So the chairman is correct. We had an opportunity today to not just recognize some of the good events that occurred this year, but we also selected our Officer and Employee of the Year and badged 4 new officers who will serve you in this town. And if I could have those 4 gentlemen come on up, and I'd like to introduce them right now. So, gents, if you line up and so I can see who you are. And from left to right, Mustafa Aku, who came to us from Hooksett and Auburn Police Department. AJ Marciano from the New Hampshire State Police. Tyler McDonald, United States Coast Guard. Cameron Verrier from the UNH Police Department. So I'd like to take this opportunity to welcome them on behalf of the town of Londonderry to the Londonderry Police Department. And while you're saying hello to those folks, I wanted to ask the Officer of the Year, Matt Moran, and our Civilian Employee of the Year, Mike Malaguti.
For a third time today, right?
Coasty, saved my ass once.
So the second, among things we do, but the second important thing we do is a committee is formed of members of the police department, civilian and sworn, and they get together beginning, I want to say late September, early October, and they begin to make a decision as to who their recommendation to me for Employee of the Year, Civilian Employee of the Year, and Officer of the Year. And this year it is with great pride, really as every year, that I introduce the Officer of the Year, Matt Moran. Well done, Matt. And Civilian Employee of the Year. If I could just spend a moment on each, just so you and the members of our community know them a little bit better. I won't take long, no more than 45 minutes or so. Just so
7 slides, Chief, 7 slides.
So, you know, a lot of times at work you realize that the very best person, but the person who always wants to be noticed for being the very best person, not as valuable an employee. When things go down, they sometimes get a little the wind out of their sails. Sometimes the very worst person, you're constantly having to spend that time training up and showing how to do the job. The guy who comes to work without complaint, who always does an excellent job. Always an excellent. I hate those words because, you know, except in this case, always an excellent. People come to him, junior officers, senior officers, come to him and say, what do you think? How would you approach this? How would you treat this situation? No complaints in, 15 years of work? Not one. People say, geez, that kid, Matt Moran, what a great kid. This is who we hired. This is who serves you. And boy, I couldn't be more proud to introduce the Officer of the Year. So, the civilian employee, not as much to say. No, I'm just kidding. So Mike came to us to fill some long-term shoes. The prior prosecutor, as Patrick talked about over there, was here for about 24 years. And, you know, there's always disquiet when a civilian comes into that law enforcement fold. I don't think it took a day when Mike was part of the community. Mike has inspired trust. Mike has inspired admiration. Mike has inspired a sense of team. He's candid and forthright when he needs to be, and relaxed all the other times. We could not have made a better choice. You know what? Time goes by, and I realize this is a guy who I call. Geez, what do you think about a case? What do you think about this situation? How would you handle it? And no greater testimony can be given for a lawyer than to have the boss feel easy to call and say, what do you think about this? Can you help me? And that always is the case. So, good job. We'll get out of your hair, and just want to say thanks very much for the opportunity. So, thank you very much.
That's what I heard. That's what I heard.
It's not carrying the gun.
It's well with the chief likes it.
Thank you.
We have a new business introduction too.
I'll see if he's here. I don't think he's here, John.
All right.
Thank you, Chief. Is Dan Rolnick here by any chance? Okay.
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, this is public comment. During the town council meeting, we entertain public comment. Generally try to have people keep their comments to about 5 minutes. So if there's anyone who would like to approach the council, now would be the time. Yes, Councilor.
Just real quick, thank you, Mr. Chairman. We often say refer to the various volunteers that we have in the community are the backbone of our local government that extends out. And I just wanted to recognize a very nice lady who spent many years volunteering as a senior in our community, volunteering in the Matthew Thornton's school across the street from here from the town hall. And I got to know her, and she surprised me a while back by reaching out and knitting me this scarf and this Santa hat. Her name is Louise Holtz, and again, she's a senior member of our community, and she volunteers at the Matthew Thornton School. So thank you, Louise, if you're out there. Thank you for your volunteerism.
Anyone else? Yes, sir. Sir, just state your name and your address for the record, please.
My name is Jack Falvey, F-A-L-V-E-Y. I live at 22 Cortlandt Street, That is Cortland, as in apples.
Thank you, sir.
Right up the street from Baldwin Street, also in apples. I'd like to address the council tonight about trees. A gentleman named Joyce Kilmer wrote a poem called Trees. And its final stanza reads like this: poems are made by fools like me, but only God can make a tree. I quoted that to Bill Levins one time, talking about his trees, and Bill said, God left us a lot of work to do just to maintain the damn things. Several years ago, Mr. Levins' ancestors, or actually his heirs, decided to sell their farm, which is fine, and Woodmont LCC was formed to develop it, and they produced a master plan. In the process of doing that, they made several statements as to how the town would benefit from their development. But also they agreed to a buffer zone in parts of their development. And in fact, they agreed to a buffer zone around the entire development where apple trees were involved. They agreed to keep 3 rows of apple trees on Gilchrist Road. I went up and measured the distance between pavement and the end of the 3rd tree, and it was 138 feet. So that was the buffer zone that existed. As the apple trees beyond that point began to be overgrown, they finally agreed to prune the trees and cut the lawn, cut the grass on the 3 rows of trees. Except that they cut it a little bit short. They cut it to 2 rows. So our town manager responded beautifully to that. After complimenting him, he called their attorney and explained that the agreement said 3 rows of trees. And the attorney in Concord said, yes, 3 rows, that's what it is. And Kevin and I looked at it and we saw 2. So their attorney came down and Kevin walked them through the orchard and they counted to 3 together. Several weeks later, the 3rd row was pruned and has been maintained that way ever since. So Kevin, thank you very much for your response. Excellent. Last Friday was Black Friday. The 3rd row was destroyed. It's an iconic row. It was pictured as the cover of the Londonderry 1999 Town Report, which is on your screen. And if you'll notice, row 2 is to your left, and row 3 is to your right. So the area in question and the rows of trees are the cover of the town report. So because this is an iconic symbol of Londonderry, but also because the developer agreed to maintain those 3 rows of trees and last Friday destroyed them, I would like to ask the town council what they intend to do. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Anyone want to comment?
Yeah, I will, John. With PODs like this, there are always going to be mistakes. There are always going to be errors. Nothing is perfect. I know from 35 years' experience of being in the construction business. It just happens. I am in the process now of trying to determine exactly how it happened, but this is where we will find out whether or not the developer is willing to work with the town. I believe they've done a good job up till now. They've kept their word, and I think this is just an unfortunate mishap. But I don't have enough information now to really determine what we can or can't do at this point. But I don't think it was done intentionally. I think there may have been some miscommunication, and I would like to see that the board be able to sit down with the developers and see if we can work out some type of compromise.
Yes, Ted.
So this was brought up to the planning board as this development was come before. have their approval for this. And it had come into light with their arborist that, that these trees were dying and that they needed to be replaced. And that the agreement was that they would be replaced with crabapple trees. So these trees will be replaced over time, but they had to be taken down for the time being because they were not savable. So they will be replaced with the agreement that was put forth at the planning board.
Okay, sir, I'm going to go through, and then I'll be happy to come back to you. If you have a public comment, you need to come forward. If you have a public comment, you need to come forward.
Now?
Yes. To state your name and address for the record, please.
Tim Seekman, 89 Hovey Road. Since you brought that up, I was just curious, is it 3 rows everywhere in Woodmont, or is it 2 rows on some roads, 3 rows on other roads?
All right, so I'm going to go back to that in a minute, but I'm going to try to get your question answered. Just, so I'm going to take the next comment behind you,
Go ahead.
and then I'm going to come back to you. Is that
All
okay? Yes?
Ann Champa, 28 Wedgewood Drive. As far as the planning board meeting, I thought we were going to continue that. No, nothing definite was set about it. It was suggested that it would, we replace them with crabapple trees, but it wasn't voted on, I don't think. It was continued. And I had suggested that we don't do that, as the PUD ordinance says we replace them with like trees, apple trees, not a crabapple tree. Londonderry is noted for its apple trees, not its crabapple trees, and putting in an imitation there doesn't serve the public, especially the public who fought so hard to get those 3 rows of trees in it. Now, I understand why the last row of trees was taken out, the 3rd row, because the gentleman said he'd interplant the first 2 rows. I totally understand that, but changing them over to crabapple trees is not what Londonderry is all about. It's apple trees.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
Thanks.
And as folks are well aware, the town council can't make those kind of decisions with regards to landscape and everything. That's done at the planning board level. Is there anything else further from the council? Yes, sir. If I could just have your name and address, please, for the
Yes.
record?
My name is Roy Bouchard, 19 Buttrick Road, and the day after Thanksgiving, I just passed 50 years in this lovely town.
Congratulations.
And unfortunately, I've seen a lot of changes. Some for the better, some not so hot.
Yeah, my wife is 51 years. She says the same thing.
It was brought out that the existing trees were sickened and beyond the point of being restored. And they made mention of some rust disease. Now, all orchards have that problem, and I think they spray to alleviate the problem. And I'm just wondering, I don't think these trees were well taken care of. And if they cut them down because they had rust, how about the rest of them? I bet they're diseased too. Maybe not. I'd like to see some backup for that rust. It was a statement that was made, and I have my doubts. I think it was just an excuse. There's another point I'd like to make. It was assumed that there'd be 3 rows of trees. There'd be the same rows of trees and the same trees. And all of a sudden now I hear that a 50-foot setback is the only criterion. And there was also a comment in the newspaper of Mr. Kettenbach that he couldn't comment on an architect's 6-year-old statement to the board. And that's especially telling. The town can do better, and I'd like to get it fixed. And I'd like to have it back the way it was. It'll have to be new trees, obviously, because of the destruction. But I think the town should put its foot down. There was an agreement, and at least the spirit of the agreement was not kept by Woodmont Commons. Thank you.
Thank you. Anything further? Sir, you have to come forward, please.
Ray Breslin, 3 Gary Drive. This was a previous agreement that 3 rows would be saved, okay? But to suggest that this was just a mistake, this has been a discussion for some time in the planning board, for instance, about this. So it was well known. I think the contractor, or at least one of the contractors, Continental Paving, doing site work, I can't believe they would not be informed. And so if I lived across the street from us, which I do not, I do live in the neighborhood, I would be upset because I would think it could potentially affect my property value, for instance, okay? So, unfortunately, in my opinion, the town of Londonderry signed an agreement with Woodmont Common, a legal agreement that I'm paraphrasing here, that the town will basically do everything in its power to assist Woodmont in whatever they would like to do, okay? Now that's I'm paraphrasing here, okay? I'm sure we have the legal agreement, anybody can read it. But I think we're doing a little too much for some of these developers without regard to what, for instance, the master plan says and what some of these other agreements say. So, I mean, there's plenty of information out there. And the gentleman asked about, is this just along Gilchrist Road or in other parts of the property? We definitely need to have that answered, because the other ones along Pillsbury Road, for instance, are either being cut down or they're being are just plain dying. Is there a legal agreement? Is there a memorandum of understanding, whatever you want to call it, between the town of Londonderry and the developer in regards to this? Or do we just overlook it and move on? Thank you.
Is there anyone else? You'd like to speak again, Ann? You want me to come back to you, Jack? Okay.
The question brought up was where else in the development this might happen. Back in 2013, we were just discussing Hubby Road, and there was an agreement that 1 row of trees would be apple trees would be left on Hubby Road. There were only, as far as I know, 2 areas mentioned, Gilchrist and Hubby Road at that time, but only one on Hubby. I just also want to mention that we're going to be looking at, if you're on Gilchrist and driving by, you'll be looking at the rears of the buildings there, because there's a street going through there along, parallel to the Gilchrist and the pond. So you're going to be seeing the backs of the houses from Gilchrist. So keeping those apple trees would be a wonderful buffer for not only people driving by on Gilchrist, also the houses there from the street. So their backyards would be actually more private. So thank you very much for your time.
Thank you. Is there anyone else before I go back to Jack?
I just want to say one thing. I think Councilor Butler pointed out that there's information that we need to look into, and I think you said it right. I said to myself, let me not repeat what he said, but at the same time, I want people to understand that even though I'm not commenting, there's some facts that we have to kind of make sure that we clarify, and the fact that there's 3, I mean, I was in all those charrettes as well. I understand the 3 rows. Everybody's talked about that today, and we're going to hold people accountable, obviously, but we need to understand the whole situation before we can do that. So,
good. Mr. Falvey.
I'd just like to agree with the comments. And I'm not an apple farmer, even though I play one on TV every now and then. I lived on the farm for 54 years and became very familiar with the farming methods and with the owners. The apple trees in question, the 3 rows, were very serviceable, perfectly healthy apple trees. Half of them were replanted 30 years ago. The other half are about 70 years old. If maintained, they can easily produce over 100 years, and there are apple trees in town that are doing that. In fact, on Pillsbury Road, there are apple trees that are owned by Woodmont and are leased and farmed by Moose Hill Orchards. Those are about 150 yards from the Gilchrist Road trees. So every time they sprayed the trees on Pillsbury, the trees on Gilchrist could also have been sprayed. They were not. So they were not maintained, and also they were neutered. So the day after the sale went through, the trees were sprayed with a chemical to prevent them from producing apples. So they stopped producing apples the day that the orchard was sold. So they were still healthy at that point. So the new owner made the decision not to maintain those trees because it was expensive. And in fact, they groomed the town to the idea that there was only 2 rows to be protected until Kevin was good enough to point out to them that it was 3 rows, and then they complied. So the issue is serious. Obviously, the trees have to be replaced, but the critical element is the 138-foot setback, which were represented by the three rows, not 50 feet. So I wish that the town would consider that, and I thank you very, very much for this amount of attention.
You're welcome, sir. Is there any further comment on this particular subject during public comment? I'm going to try to answer your question.
Right, but I brought it up for a reason, is what I was gonna say.
Okay, sure, go ahead.
So, on Hovey Road, they maintain 2 rows of trees. Now, they haven't cut anything down, so it goes, I don't know, maybe 10 rows in for all I know. They only cut the grass and groom the trees 2 rows in.
Okay.
So the first thing everyone thinks there is, there's only gonna be 2 rows on Hovey Road, because that's all they're taking care of. Everything from row 3 on is overgrown, straggly, they don't trim the trees or nothing. They don't maintain them or anything. So, if we're supposed to have 3 rows on Hovey, they're only maintaining 2, so. But I've heard before that they were only gonna maintain 2 rows, 3 rows, 2 rows. That's why I ask, what are they supposed to maintain on Hovey? Is it 3 rows also, or is it just Gilchrist?
Okay.
So,
All right, so folks, I'm going to try to tie this conversation together. I don't remember as well as I used to, so I'm going to try to remember as much as I can about this. The town attorney was here for another reason today. The town attorney is here, and he's in the room. If I start going down the wrong path, I'm going to ask him to correct me based on his recall. The orchard has not probably been worked for 8 or 9 years in that area. Several years ago, the sitting council at that time asked for myself and for Attorney Ramsdell to go sit down with the owners and come up with what is the agreement. There are some things that are in the agreement which do refer to rows of trees and buffers and along those lines, but I believe it probably would be prudent of us to go back and make sure that we have all the facts right before I say whether it was 50 foot or it was three rows or whatever that case may be. So with the consensus of the council, I'd like to ask that our attorney review it, come back with, he's heard everything that's been said here in the room, so it won't be secondhand, and give us a point of view on where we stand with regards to that. Does that sound about right, Attorney Ramsdell? Be happy to do that. Thank you. So with regards to all the other pieces, a lot took place over the years. At one point, there was a conversation with the Mac Farm about coming in and farming the trees. There was a conversation about that. The Mac Farm says, they're an industrial farm. We're more of an agricultural farm. The level of pesticides being used is far different. It's a different kind of farming technology. We're not really comfortable with it. What had come up with that time is that Hank Peterson would go over and he would cut the lawn. And he would go by row. After Hank passed on, I think less of the lawn got cut. But I think that they've tried to do a nice job of trying to maintain those pieces as they've gone forward. My understanding of the current situation with the 28 homes is that he's building the developer that Woodmont is bringing in to do the work is developing single-family homes, and that Woodmont has to remediate the soil and has to take care of the trees. That's my understanding of the agreement. And if I have that wrong, I'll have Attorney Ramsdell come back and correct whatever it is that I'm getting wrong. That's our current understanding. I believe that the council probably wants what's going to give us the best view shed for those areas for that development. That may be apple trees. That may be something else that maybe benefits the town long-term in a better way. That's really more of a discussion for the planning board. Just so that you understand, from state regulations, the town council has the authority to appoint to the planning board and appoint to the ZBA and to the Heritage Commission. We have no legal authority over land use boards. We can't go and tell them what to do. They have to follow the laws that are passed down by the legislature. We can certainly voice our opinion on what we want them to do, and we are the final approving authority. But the current agreement is filed with the deed in county records. So with that, unless there's any other questions, I think excuse me one second, sir, I'll be right with you. If there's not any other questions, I would like to ask the council if we would just have our attorney review it. He's heard the questions this evening and come back and present to the council that point of view.
Please
I
do.
agree.
Yep.
Okay? Good? I'm sorry, folks, that's all I can do for tonight, but I hope that's satisfactory for this evening. Yes, sir, you have a question.
Ray Breslin, 3 Gary Drive. I don't want to believe this because I know you have a lot of business to take care of here. But as you said, there was or is some concern with pesticides. What kind of pesticides could be used, would be used, has been used? The question here that comes up, is this a brownfield site?
Totally unknown to me.
Okay, wait a minute. Now Gilchrist, South Gilchrist, has been described as a brownfield site. At this point, soil samples have not been taken, so, I mean, how would you know, or even call it one, until you've taken the soil samples to determine? And the reason it's being called a brownfield site is because it was an apple orchard, I believe owned by Woodmont, that pesticides were sprayed on.
Mr. Breslin, that is under the EPA's control, and it involves far more than apple spraying. There is no reference in any way, shape, or form by this council or anybody else that I've heard in the public domain that the Woodmont Orchard sites are brownfield.
Okay, so we don't know then, do we?
Yes, that's what I said, sir.
Exactly. Okay, so with all the disturbance that has been on Woodmont, we, none of us here, know, because apparently a testing of the soil and runoff has not been done.
I am unaware of what steps have been taken. I know that there are steps that are required to be done by DES, by Wetlands Board, by the EPA, and I know that they're complying with all of those right now.
I would suggest we need that information, and you know what my thing is. It's about the protection of water, okay?
I understand.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes.
Just quickly to clarify, if anyone wants to look at the Woodmont Commons master plan that was approved, it's on the website, the town website under the Planning and Economic Department. Tim, on page 156, it talks about perimeter buffers. And just very quickly, it states 1 row of apple trees where existing will remain along Hovey and Pillsbury roads within the 50-foot perimeter buffer.
So, and it says, we'll look into that in greater detail and have a presentation back to the county council. Yes, Mr. Falvey.
Last quick question. Is the council aware that Woodmont is selling the property, not bringing in a developer? And they have a purchase and sale agreement pending with Stabile Company.
Yes, sir.
I met with the Stabile Company. What they intend to do is they intend to maintain a buffer, whatever it is agreed upon, and that buffer will be owned by each individual household in that development. So each of the trees will be owned by individual lot owners. There will be a lot owners association that then will be responsible, evidently, for maintaining it. So there has to be another agreement between an owners association about this buffer. So they anticipate developing it according to the plan, the site plan. And the question is, how is the town going to interact on the next agreement to maintain the buffer?
So, Mr. Falvey, with regards to the agreement, I did speak to Mr. Kettenbach a couple of days ago.
Yep.
And he did tell me a couple of things. One, he said the selling price would be starting at $550,000, was my understanding.
Right.
And that he also, was my understanding that he was not looking for any homeowners associations. Now, what I will do is I will ask the town attorney to take a look at the agreement. There are different provisions within the agreement, but the Woodmont development is approximately 600 acres. I believe that if we act and work with our legal counsel, it would behoove the developers of a 600-acre agreement to work with us to do what's best for the community, and I think that's the way the council feels.
But are they selling the 20 acres that are on Gilchrist?
I believe there are provisions for them to do different things within the agreement with approval of the planning board. But again, I'll ask the town attorney to clarify all that for us. It was 7 or 8 years ago, and I don't want to tell you yes or no until I get it checked.
I met with Stabile last week, and they said they were buying it.
I understand what you're saying. What I'm asking is if the town attorney will review it and tell me if that's okay within the agreement.
Fine. Appreciate very much your time. Thank you.
You're very welcome.
Yep.
Anything further? Anything further on any public comment? I'm going to move off of public comment pretty quickly here if there's nothing further. Thank you, folks. Thank you for your patience. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to jump around in the agenda here a little bit and everything. I do know I'm listed to have a public hearing first. I'm going to jump something forward for new business at the request of the fire chief. I'm going to jump new business resolution 2019-12 for presentation of unaccepted revenue from our fire chief. Chief O'Brien, floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Back on October 10th, I was contacted by the Crossroads Animal Hospital by Tracy, who is one of the managers down at the store, and they were looking to hold a fundraiser to benefit something that we were looking for at the fire department. So my administrative assistant, Suzanne Roy, who is big into volunteering for different animal organizations around town and in the southern New Hampshire area, I directed her to contact the folks at the Crossroads Animal Hospital. And back a few weeks ago, they held what they called Pictures with Santa with your pets. And in doing so, they were able to raise $2,000 for the fire department to those pictures that I gave you there on the counter. It's going to be for our animal shelter that we have when we open our emergency shelter over at the high school. So these are different things that are in this cart that will be able to suffice for the pets that are brought over to the animal shelters for a long period of time. So in saying that, I would like to recognize Dr. Robin Hurdle, who is the owner of Crossroads Animal Hospital. I'd like to recognize Tracy, who was the person who contacted me, who is the client care representative in marketing. Wendy, the hospital manager. Alexis, the the technician supervisor. And again, my administrative assistant, Suzanne Roy, for putting this together. So thank you very much.
Thank you. So I'm digging this out here. So can I have a motion to accept the unanticipated revenue for resolution 2019-12?
So moved, Mr. Chairman.
Second.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Chair votes affirmative. Thank you very much. The motion passes 5-0. I'm going to jump something else here. Mr. Cotton, order 2019-27. Order relative to maintenance trust fund. Can you tell us a little bit about this?
Yes, sir. Good evening. Tonight, we've had an active amount of issues with the various town buildings. First, what we're doing at the highway garage for $2,567 is trying to improve the lighting at the DPW garage for night operations, which we had quite a bit at the beginning of December, so these lights are helping out there. The next item is for winter maintenance at our senior center. We have a contractor taking care of that. That was for the main storm, the December 2nd, 3rd, 7th, and then some on the 11th for $815. The next item is I bought 2 pallets of salt in an attempt to reduce the cost of the last item on the request, so that we have the salt here, that I'm not purchasing the salt through the Shady Hill, putting it down. They'll put it down as long as we have the salt. So I'm trying to save some dollars there. The next item is over on the library. There's a sort of an architectural trim piece, metal, goes around the building. Piece of metal blew off, so that was on the original section of the library. So we had to make that repair to get that metal back. That was $600. North Fire, the employees were reporting that we had a crack in the toilet, so we replaced that just for the safety of the employees. That's $457. The fuel farm behind Central Fire that feeds the police department, fire department, town hall vehicles. The logic board went on Thanksgiving, so that was $2,370. Here at Town Hall, we have additional leaks in the black iron pipes up in the attic. That's got to get repaired for $1,500. In addition, it took out the compressor, so we're putting in a new air compressor that was put in 2005. That's $2,475. And then finally, the last item is the storm that we had at the beginning of the month that entailed taking care of this complex. Police Department, Access Center, Central Fire. Central Fire has now been picked up, which wasn't in the past. Now with all the new parking area, the construction going on. So that totals $7,715. So for tonight, for the order 201927, I'm looking for $19,563.30. Any
Mr. Chairman,
questions?
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a motion
Please do.
to approve order 2019-27.
I need a second.
Second.
All those in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Chair votes affirmative. Thank you, Steve. Good night.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Okay, folks, we're going to jump back forward to the public hearing.
Chairman, I'd like to open a public hearing.
Second.
All those in favor, are you stopping me from the public hearing? All those in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Chair votes affirmative. We are now in public hearing for ordinance 2019-07, an amendment to section 5.15 of the Londonderry zoning ordinances related to portable structures, continued from the last meeting.
So, Mr. Chairman, just an update on this. Since the last meeting, Colleen and Richard have had discussions with Attorney Ramsdell, and they believe they've worked out a compromise solution that isn't so rigid with regard to the way the last ordinance was written, with basically a one extension for the lifetime and then having to go to the ZBA. The language has not been drafted yet. And so, Mark, what they'll have to do is they'll draft language. They'll obviously talk to you first before anything goes forward to let you know what they've come up with. But because the changes are substantial, it'll have to go back to the planning board for approval by the planning board first before it comes back to the council. Because the changes are substantial enough that if the council were to approve it, the planning board wouldn't have had a say on it.
Okay, so my understanding of the changes are that they'll no longer require to go for a variance. It will be a planning board document that we've done by conditional use permit or something along those lines?
Special exception.
Special exemption. Okay, so what does that mean in English, so that everybody understands?
It would mean as long as it meets the criteria that's written in the planning board, the planning board zoning, if it meets the special exception criteria, it would not have to go for a variance.
So was this gonna have to be done by staff or by site plan?
I'm not sure on that.
So that kink still needs to be worked out.
Correct.
Definitely needs to go back to the planning board. So basically, all right, so I'm sorry. I thought I heard something over here. No? No?
Oh, I'm
I'm just, you're just entertained by it, I
I'm
see.
just very entertained that we're going on to almost a 9-month time period on this.
Okay, I think he was up first. Go ahead.
So procedurally, do we need to disapprove this ordinance as presented tonight? And then
Yes,
kick it back to the planning board?
I believe that is correct. So what will happen is we will take a motion, we will vote no, and we will send it back to the planning board for revision. So, yes.
Anybody talk about the permitting process continuing throughout the, in other words,
So
would
if
it be?
it has a special exemption on the plan,
Yep.
they have to build criteria around that, which I
So we
don't
don't
think,
know yet.
I don't think they've built the complete criteria around it.
Okay.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, this is a public hearing. Are there any questions? Yes, ma'am.
Now, at what point did we stop this? What was the language of the ordinance at the, right now? What is it? Because we have made changes.
There is no language right now that has been rewritten. My understanding at this point is that there are significant changes proposed to be made to the ordinance.
Okay.
As the ordinance is presented to the town council, I'm going to ask for a motion to deny and send back to the planning board.
I didn't get a chance to hear the last meeting on it, so I'm not sure what happened. It's still at 45 days. It didn't go to 6 months, I understand. Is that correct?
So basically what happened is that it came to the council. The overall question, the questions that came about is 6 months and an extension for 6 months, and it's forever, and the
Okay.
variance follows that property forever.
Okay.
So we sent it back and said, well, what would be the criteria in which you could meet the 5 points of law? Finding out after speaking to council that they could probably never meet the 5 points of law. So we said is go back, relook at the ordinance, talk to staff, talk to the Fortons, talk to those that have been involved, and said, why don't we come up with something that's a little bit more manageable for the community and manageable for the people who are using these structures? So what we're proposing at this point is, my understanding of what we're proposing at this point is that staff is going to take this back to the planning board. They're going to go back and talk to them about a conditional use permit and about how that function may work through the planning board processes. Whether it's going to be handled as a staff type of review or whether it's going to be handled by site plan, I don't know at this point. That's a planning board determination.
Okay, one last question. Was it still 20 feet long, or did it go to 40 feet? It's still originally 20?
We didn't discuss it.
Okay,
Yeah, I mean, Mr. Chairman?
that's what I'm,
Yes.
Mr. Chairman? Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of questions. I mean, I even wanted to bring up the permanent versus non, but I don't
I
think there's
understand.
enough information here, so I guess we can kind of push it off and then.
I think very clear direction has been discussed and by staff and by building and by the town attorney to send back to the planning board for consideration is what I've been told.
And just so everyone knows what is, special exceptions, how they work. So a home occupation is done by special exception. So you
understand
don't
that.
have to get a variance, but if you meet the criteria within the planning board zoning, you can get a special exception to have a home occupation. Similarly, if you meet the criteria that's set forth in the zoning ordinance for the planning board to have a portable storage, you could get it by special exception after the extension, the six-month extension expires.
okay, so right now, it's still at 20 feet. I understand that, but I'm just
Nothing
wondering-
else was-
Nothing has been changed to
Nothing's
40
been
feet
changed.
or
No,
anything, okay.
Yeah, I
I'm
think what
fine.
we're trying to do is see if we can find a place to the middle. And I don't know if
Okay,
we'll
that's
get there,
fine.
but we're gonna try.
I appreciate that.
Okay,
Thank you.
fantastic. Are there any other questions? This is a public hearing.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a motion to reject ordinance 2019-07.
Second?
All those in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Chair votes affirmative. The ordinance is denied.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a motion to close the public hearing.
Second.
All those in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Chair is affirmative. Public hearing is closed. Okay, on to old business. Again, I'm gonna jump around a little bit because we're gonna talk about, social services agencies, so I'm gonna hold the budget committee where it is for the moment. I'm gonna see what I can do about getting, Mr. Malaguti out of here. So, Mike, what do we got going on here with this, 201, this, 10 and 09?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is the same two ordinances that came before you for public hearing and/or readings, which were waived on 11/25 and 12/9. Both of them are now ready for council action, with one slight change that I want to draw to the council's attention. That's in Resolution 2019-09. And the change you'll see, I believe, is in your packets, is in the now therefore clause at the end. Previously, it said, now therefore be it resolved that the Londonderry Town Council has voted affirmatively to discontinue absolutely and forever the right-of-way identified above. And the slight change that has been made just adds the following language to the end of that sentence. Effective and conditioned upon planning board approval of a lot line adjustment plan and recording of deeds effectuating conveyance of same. What that does is it just clarifies that the council cannot, by resolution, convey property, and subsequent deeds will be needed in order to do that. And those deeds are going to need to be based on a plan that's recorded with the Registry of Deeds.
All right, so I need to rescind 10 and approve 9?
So actually, you're going to be approving, if it pleases the council, Resolution 10. That is separate from what I just discussed. 10 is the one to convey the property, the board's or the town's interest in the property. 9 is the one to discontinue the roadway. So you'll be voting on 10 and 9, and I'm happy to answer any questions that you have on those.
9 kind of has to do before 10, right?
I think I can do them both at the same time.
I don't think it matters which.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a motion that we approve resolutions 2019-9 and 10.
Second?
All right, motion and a second with Mr. Malaguti's explanation. All those in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Chair votes affirmative. Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much. Have a good night.
Thank you. All right, sorry, budget, I'm gonna jump around again here on you. Is there anyone here tonight who's here to be interviewed for a position? All right, I'm gonna try to get you guys out of here, so if you can all come up here in these first couple of rows, and I'm gonna try to get you out of here before we get into the charities and everything else. Sorry, guys, but we'll try to move through these as fast, we're gonna take a while.
Right, that's what.
So see if we can move these folks out. I want to encourage them to volunteer, I don't want them to know that we stay here till midnight. Okay, let's see what we got here for appointments. As I'm going through them, wishes to be reappointed. Are there any folks here tonight to be interviewed who are being reappointed? No. Okay. I'll come back and we'll do nominations at the end. Tom, is there Tom Banshee?
No.
No, he's not here? Term was
Mr.
not up,
Chairman,
but
with-
he's resigning.
Mr. Chairman, with regards to Tom Banky, I think that he has been absent, and I'd like to see if the town could get in touch with him and see if he's still interested in it. I don't think we've heard from him in quite some time.
Okay, all right, we'll
We've
check
actually
that.
contacted his family a few times with no response too.
No response?
Okay, I've not heard back.
So-
We should be I'm trying to find
Yeah.
these ones these folks are interviewing, wishes to be reappointed.
Reappointed, reassigned.
All right, why don't I make this easy? Why don't we start with this gentleman right here? Why don't you come on up and tell us your name? Instead of me trying to search through all this paperwork, I got like, I mean, look at this, this is what I got. I mean, you don't want to be here till 9 o'clock or 10. So, sir, why don't we do this? Why don't you introduce yourselves to the council and tell us what you're interested in? And then I'll find your paperwork.
Sure. My name is Rob Palmer, 18 Welsh Road. I was actually part of Leadership Londonderry, so thank you all for sponsoring that and for having us do that. I was part of last year's class.
You won't believe this. I opened right up to your pitch.
Wonderful. Excellent. So there were a couple committees that I thought would be interesting for me. One was the Senior Resources Committee, and the second was the Solid Waste and Environmental Committees. You know, the good thing about doing the Londonderry Leadership Program is you get a chance to see what everyone is working on in these committees. I thought both of those were super interesting in what they were trying to accomplish and what they were doing. And from my perspective, I've lived in the town for almost 15 years and thought that this was just a good chance to give back to, you know, the town and given what everyone has done for us.
Fantastic. I also see here that you might be interested in the Budget Committee at some point.
That's true.
Well, you know, signups are going to be in January, so you'll keep that in
Pay
mind.
attention.
All right, let's see. And Senior Resource. Does anyone have any questions for Robert? Gentlemen, any questions?
And thank you for volunteering.
No? Do you believe that there's any conflicts that you want to tell us about on any of these type of things that you can think of?
Only thing that I would mention is I do work for a software company, and so anything to do with software would be something that we'd have to look at.
Yeah, I do too. You don't find much of a conflict.
There we go.
Yeah. Thank you, Robert.
Thank you.
Appreciate it very much. We'll be voting at the end of the meeting on these different positions. Hi, sir. How are you? What's your name?
Good, and thank you for getting us in. My name is Jim Browning, 1 Walnut Drive.
Hi, Jim. How are you?
Good, thank you.
Why don't you tell us a little about yourself and what you're interested in, sir?
I've been living in town since 2008. My wife and I previously lived in Derry. We have 2 children, a boy soon to be 13 and a girl who's 11. And primarily I'm interested in the Recreational Committee, alternatively the Conservation Commission. Like I said, personally I have 2 children and a wife and 2 dogs, so I'm fairly entrenched in the community, especially with the schools and the athletic fields. We practically live at LAFA in the spring and the summer, as well as at the basketball courts and every other part of the season. So I think those things right there kind of lend me to being interested in the recreational committee. Professionally, I work for an insurance company in the law/claims department. I went to law school in Boston. I'm licensed in Massachusetts, although right now I work in a non-conventional quasi legal type of position.
So you crossed off planning board, but you're not interested in planning board.
I did cross off planning board. I might have a conflict there, so I'm going to start with the rec committee and alternatively the conservation commission.
All right. As a 5-year umpire chief in LAFA and having spent April to July there for 5 years, I can tell you that it has the least amount of mosquitoes in the town.
It does, and probably the most wind.
That's probably true.
My son is he for the first time he did the umpire program last year, and I think he's going to do it again this year. It's a great program.
Great character building thing. Any questions for Jim?
No.
Jim, thank you for volunteering.
Thank you. Have a good
We're
evening.
going to vote at the end of the meeting, and
Thank you.
we'll get back to you. Okay, sir. Next gentleman.
Evening, folks.
Hi, sir.
My name's Ted Coleman, 6 October Lane. We've been there for all of 2 months. My connection with this area is my wife, who was born and raised in Winchester, Mass., but had a place in New Boston, New Hampshire. And we've moved 7 times. I was in the retail business for 38 years. Had my own business for 18 years where I did financial planning. And as much as anything, my wife wants me to get out of the house so I don't bug her anymore.
Well,
But,
being in the retail business, you weren't used to being home anyway, right?
No, and that's why I'm here. I like to stay busy and involved. And during the time, I did a lot of financial planning for retailers as well as strategic planning. If I look at the committees that are open, probably the Senior Resources Committee and the Planning Board. While in retail, I was on the 401k committee, I was on the pension committee, both of which were overfunded. I was 11 years, when I lived in Michigan, we moved 7 times, I was in Michigan. I was on the library board for 11 years, head of the finance committee. and we were overfunded in both the pension as well as the health care. My wife and I met when I was a Midwestern boy from St. Louis. Came to Amherst College, met my wife, went to Mount Holyoke, and then I went on to a business school at the Wharton Business School. So I'm looking to keep busy, and I think with my background and experience, I will be able to contribute a great deal to either of these committees.
Fantastic. I also see you clicked off Budget Committee, possibly
Yes.
running for office as well.
Yeah.
So those signups will be in January.
Right.
I don't know what open positions there are or not, but generally there are year to year. Just one. Actually, we have a one-year term that's rotating, and we have two. We have. I think yours will be a two-year term. So I think we have. Yeah, I think there's a couple. So there's two or three. So
Elected, yeah.
elected positions. Gentlemen, questions for Ted?
Thanks for stepping up. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. This next young fella,
Thank you for that.
new to town, sir?
Yes, I am. New in 1978, as you can see by the application that you have in front of you.
So you're Mr. DeFrancisco?
Yes, I
and
am.
your
Tony
address is?
DeFrancisco, 1 Cheshire Court. And as some of you know, I bring a rather unique set of skills. As I've had an opportunity to build both residential and commercial in town, so I've been on both sides of the desk. As I said, I've been here since 1978, and most of you know I've been paying attention for all those years as well. And I can tell you that I think the planning board is a good fit for me. I certainly enjoyed my time on the board temporary last year for 4 months, and that gave me the impetus to put in this application. And I think for that reason, it'll be a smooth transition if I'm lucky enough to be appointed. So with that, I'll take any questions that you might have.
Gentlemen, any questions for Tony?
Tony, I see with your unique set of skills, you did find us, so.
I was able to find you.
So you have down here on planning board, no interest in the school board, I understand.
I
I think I mentioned that at a meeting I was
I
at.
think I made that clear last Tuesday. I will
Okay.
not be running for school board, for those of you who missed that meeting. I never had any intention of it, but you know how small towns work.
Yep. Anything else? Thank you, Tony. We'll be voting at the end of the meeting.
Thank you.
Sir? Hi, how are you?
Hey, how are you?
Good, thanks.
John Mahan, 26 King Arthur Drive.
Hi, John.
My wife and I have lived in town for about 30 years. We've had 4 of our kids go through the school system here. I recently retired the last couple of years and looking to give back to a town that we truly love. My wife was an employee here for 20 years in the fire department. So got involved with this year's class of Leadership Londonderry, and saw an opportunity to volunteer and maybe take a little bit of what I'm learning there and what I've seen here and contribute a little bit more back to the town.
Fantastic. Thank you. I think I met you at the last class.
Yes.
Yes. So, any questions for John?
Thanks for stepping up.
What's he interested in? Sorry.
He is interested in Heritage, Planning Board, Solid Waste, and Zoning Board.
Not all of those, please.
Really? Okay, your wife wants you out of the house, doesn't she? We're a fun group, especially the ZBA. They don't follow any rules or anything. Oh, wrong board.
I have a comment, not a question. We miss Betsy.
Oh, okay.
She's great.
Yeah.
She was awesome. She is
But
awesome.
She's retired a year now, so I'm about ready to send her back, so.
Yeah.
We'll see if Bill. You see, the chief will take her back. All set? Thanks, John.
Thank you, Jim.
Sir. You know, this was a pretty efficient way to do this. We gotta think of this more often.
Good evening, Chairman, councilors. My name is Chris Kenny. I live at 177 High Range Road.
Hi, Chris.
I've been a buyer planner in manufacturing for probably about 15 years now. So lots of experience with planning and scheduling. I'm also the chairman currently of the Heritage Commission, and I'm looking to get on the ZBA if possible.
Okay.
And Councilor Combs, I don't know how many people in the room got your Liam Neeson joke earlier, but I appreciated it.
You're welcome.
Somebody's listening, Ted.
At least now you know you got one vote.
Oh, God.
God help us. You know, you see what I have to deal with?
Gotta keep it lively here, you know?
Hey, listen, we have a lot more fun than the Derry Council does. I mean, they got lights and rules and people yell at each other. We try to have laughs. You know? All right, any questions for Chris?
Thanks for stepping up.
I think I've attended a couple of the meetings. Thank you. You do a nice job with them.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Thank you very much.
Okay, folks, is there anyone else I forgot to interview for positions this evening? All right, folks, after we go through the budget committee and go through our budget workshop, we'll come back and we'll be voting for the different positions and making those nominations and working through them. If you're welcome to stay, you certainly don't have to stay, but if you do stay, you'll kind of see how the budget committee helps us make the sausage. So with that,
All right.
you like that joke
I
too?
like that
huh?
one.
That was good.
You know, I mean, it's an old one and a bad one. All right, Tim. I don't. I did get it. I got it electronically, didn't I?
Yeah, we have a PDF.
I didn't get it.
We got a PDF.
So I don't know if you guys want these, there's two more if you guys want one, or you guys want.
Oh, yeah, here he is, yeah, but,
That's all right, yeah.
Tom, you wanna?
thank you. Yeah, he was on the list here, but,
But he's not here.
did we not interview Damaso?
No, I don't think so.
John, we didn't interview DiMarzio, right?
Is he here?
He's not coming in, he's only interested in the Manchester Airport Authority.
Okay.
Oh.
Yes.
Yeah, I didn't miss anybody who's here, right? Okay. All righty, gentlemen, it's all you.
Okay, we covered the charities this year. We actually had 15 organizations, which is, I think, our all-time high so far. That was one more than last year, but in this whole scheme of things, we had 2 organizations that were removed. We had one, not completely new, one prior organization that was had skipped 2 years and it resubmitted again this year. So that was we went from 14 last year, we dropped 2, added 1, so we're up to 15. Or yeah, we're up to 15. We have of those 2 that dropped, that was roughly a $2,000 funding that was open to be redistributed. And the way we looked at this was, as you can see on the slide 2, we have a list of criteria that we go through, and I just listed kind of the 5 that we used this time more than the other ones. Primary considerations were, do the organizations have other funding sources of revenue, like state? Do they collect revenue, or are they just 100% by donations? How many Londonderry residents did they serve? How high is the demand for services, and what services? Sometimes, like drug intervention might be the biggest thing with the opioid epidemic. Was there a rise in fuel assistance? Was there a rise in housing? Where we try to follow the trends on what Londonderry's needs are based on which organizations are providing those needs. The population that the organization serves, and one of the things we've been getting more and more intense on every year is, do they come make their case to Londonderry? You know, almost most of them, the majority of them, all show up to present what they need to do. Sometimes they don't present, and if you'll notice on the, probably should jump to slide 3 so you can see the things. We did have one that they haven't been with us for the last 2 years, and they came back in and re-requested this year.
but they did not show up at the presentations. You know, we had one in October, one in November. They didn't make either one of those. So we didn't have the chance to ask them, you know, how sound they are, what was the problem over the last 2 years, why did they drop out, why are they now back, what's going on? We
Mr.
didn't-
Vice Chair? Yeah.
Yes.
Tim, which one was that?
This would be
That would-
Family Promise.
Yeah, Family Promise.
Didn't say the name,
if-
that was all.
Yeah, if you look on the bottom of the spreadsheet one, you'll see where they are.
Red, yeah.
We weren't sure how fiscally sound they were. We didn't have anything to go off of other than just a request, you know, after being gone for 2 years. And as you can see, with them coming back in, we dropped Keystone Hall and Harbor Homes this year after they came in last year. They had some issues. They're not servicing this area. Jonathan did some research on to find out kind of what was going on. They're not, from I understand, one of them's not servicing this area. They did not request anything, assistance this year, so we dropped them. So that kind of prompted a little more concern on how viable are they? Are they gonna be around? Are they not? You know, what happened to them? Since we got nothing from them, we decided not to donate any revenue to them until they can submit next year and we can see more how viable they are, where they're gonna help. We just need more information other than a request letter. So we decided not to fund that charity at this point. So that left the remaining, let me get the number right, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 12. The remaining 13 charities. Of those 13, the $2,000 that were removed from last year, we pretty much kept the high volume ones the same, and we looked at who had the highest demand based on what they were doing, where we saw the greatest gap in assistance for some of the charities. So what we decided was Big Brothers and Big Sisters, we took them from 940, gave them the extra $60, just rounded it up to 1,000. They also have some, I think it was 3 now waiting for like volunteers for Big Brothers. They serviced 3, and they got 3 kids waiting for Big Brothers and Big Sisters in Londonderry. So it wasn't much of an increase, but we figured we'd round it off to 1,000. Maybe that could help in some way. Sunshine Soup Kitchen, we raised them from 1,500 to 2,000. We raised the YMCA from 4,160 up to the 5,000 they were requesting because they're expanding the teen center with more things. And Isaiah 58, we increased them from 1,000 to 1,600 based on their housing assistance and stuff that they're trying to do with the local area. So, any questions?
So you went over YMCA and Isaiah, not that I have any problems with it. I think it's a great organization, Sunshine Soup Kitchen. What was the criteria of why you went up $500?
The reason why we went up, we increased on Sunshine Soup Kitchen is they do a lot of, they feed a lot of families in our region, obviously at no cost, as well as provide articles of clothing and provide other needs. To kind of caveat off of Tim, if I may, when we were reviewing all the nonprofits, we took a big look at what organizations are national, who are receiving funds from whether it's corporate donors or other programs, and felt that we should really focus more so in the ones that affect our local community. One of the reasons why we increased the YMCA is the theory behind that is, as you know, school time doesn't coincide with work hours, or coincides with work hours. So we felt that an increase there would help keep the tuition down a little bit, which would affect the local parents and taxpayers of the community. Did that answer your question?
Thank you, yes.
Anything further? It's gonna be an easy
The Keystone Hall and Harbor Homes have other organizations that did kind of the same things that?
They kind of overlap, yeah. So there are other organizations that kind of do what they do. But Jonathan, if you want to say anything about what they did, because you did
Cheerson
more
had
research.
actually.
Oh, you did? Okay.
Ted, what I think you're asking is, are we filling the same need that that organization filled? Is that what you're asking?
Yes.
Yes, so that's part of the reason why we favored Isaiah 58. One of the biggest challenges on resources right now is that the larger cities are taking most of the resources for housing insecurity, and that's what Harbor Homes and Keystone Hall fulfilled, and so that's why we routed some of that money towards Isaiah 58, which is a particularly nimble nonprofit because it's not affiliated with any state or municipal agency, so it has a lot more flexibility what it can do, and it directly serves families in Londonderry. In fact, part of their leadership board is from Londonderry, so they're a very locally oriented organization like the Sunshine Soup Kitchen. So we were very cognizant about preserving those funds for housing and security.
And my other question is, did you guys get a sense from Sunshine Soup Kitchen upon how many more meals they'd be able to provide with the extra money? I know they feed a lot of people throughout the year.
It's hard to see. Sunshine Soup Kitchen doesn't track anything. They don't ask questions when you come in there. They don't, they give everything away that they get for the most part. So it's one of those things, don't ask, don't tell. We don't ask where you came from. How are you really in need? Are you not? If you come in and you're hungry, they feed you. So it's one of those things where the volume has gone up, but they don't kind of keep track of, they don't ask any questions when you come in, so.
I'm sure they were grateful for the money, though.
Yeah.
Yes. I just wanted to mention to the Budget Committee, really appreciate you vetting these organizations. Almost all of them do very good work, and it's hard to say no to additional money, but we really do appreciate the hard work that you do to vet them and make sure that they're using our taxpayers' dollars appropriately. Thank you.
Yeah, I just want to echo that too. When we started this process a few years ago, it was kind of willy-nilly, for lack of a better way of putting it. And you guys have done a really good job of formalizing the whole process, really, as Tom said, vetting them all very well. And I mean, the PowerPoint, we haven't had a PowerPoint in the past, so you've done a really nice job of, ferreting this all out for us.
But we can thank Kirsten for that, because when she was chair, she started it, so we're just all following it from there, so.
She took the one-to-one technology program.
I don't care where she got it, it works perfect.
And I think a lot of people would also say that the primary consideration piece and how you prioritize the money and where it should go, I really like a lot myself, and I appreciate that piece.
Thank you.
All right. We have a consensus to accept it
Yes.
as presented? Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, is there anything further tonight for Budget Committee for Budget Workshop?
Not for Budget Committee. I have just kind of two quick things.
Please proceed.
One item is just going back to that elderly exemption. The question was asked at the last meeting, at least as the way I understood it, was what would we have to increase it to, or what would we have to increase it by to, make it so that everyone who was receiving the exemption last year and as a result of it was not paying any money in property taxes, if that were to be their scenario. Again, it's hard to do that for everyone because everyone's home is a different value. And so in some cases it's 15%, probably in the biggest case it's 25%. But that is at least, those are the amounts in between there where you're going to capture most of those folks. But we can always go higher than that, lower.
Where were we at to stay flat? What did we have to stay? Just ballpark. To stay flat, we were where?
20%.
20% to stay flat.
Pretty much.
To have the rules be the same for everyone would be at 20%.
Yes.
So increase the elderly exemption by 20%.
And I just want to say, it's going to capture.
We have to go to a public hearing and everything on this, right?
Right, yeah. It's going to capture 90%. It may not capture 100% of everyone last year.
And at 25%, we're going to capture everybody.
Correct.
And you
I'm just,
yeah,
so that's where we are. Okay.
And did you have, since we're on the topic, did you have any of those, one of the things I asked was take a look at 25% and see what that would cost us? Is that something that you've done yet, or?
The number I have, Joe, just want to make sure I'm comparing it to the right one here.
So I know we were talking about 10, 15, 20, but I was like, no, let's talk about 25 too, because just in case we come back with numbers.
Right. So the number's going to be around, it's probably going to be around 120,000 if we went up 25%. Because you're looking at 15% increase is 70,000. It's about 92,000 to go to 20. And so about to go to 25 is going to be close to 120,000 around there.
So if we split the difference, and we're at 22.5, 99% of the people aren't gonna get hurt.
Yes, that's correct.
Without getting deeper into it,
Yeah.
I would suggest that's a good starting point
It is
until
a
we
good
move
start.
to public hearing.
No, it's a good start. I was just wondering, how does that affect our overall tax rate?
And what I think we need to do with that is we need to bring all of it to a public hearing with all of the criteria and all those questions, and then figure it out in the public hearing.
Sounds good.
I think what he's looking for is direction, right?
Yeah, I
Okay,
just want
that's fine.
the only thing I'd like the council to understand, this point that I made last time too, is that before this happened, we had, and I know you have to, if I'm getting them, you have to be getting phone calls from seniors in town. And you have to be hearing, I don't even want to say the silent suffering, again, because otherwise I'll be in the newspaper. But you know, people out there, they're having a hard time. So, you know, trying to provide a little bit of, you know, help, talking about the 25%, I don't think is even close to being out of the question, I think. So I just want you guys to all think about that a little bit and just.
And that's what public hearings
Yep.
are for. But remember where we started?
Yep.
The assessor said 10%.
Yeah.
Right.
We went to 20, and now we're at
Now we're
22.5.
So
So,
we're getting
so when, if I may, Mr. Chairman, so when we get to the public hearing, and we're gonna have the tax impact of the 22 and a half, I'd also like to see where we would sit comparatively with the other communities in the state, to see, you know, are we the largest in the state in this regard, or are we in the top 5, or the top 50, or where do we stand comparatively? I think
Let's see
that's
where we sit.
important.
Mr. Chairman, I agree with that 100%, but the other piece of data that you're going to need is what our percentage of seniors versus the other communities that we compare to are as well. Sorry.
Well, more
Thank you.
importantly, what you're gonna have to really see is what are the dollars?
Yep.
You know, if, you know, if Wyndham is at 400,000 and they're giving back no money, who cares that they're at 400,000? So let's see what the dollars are. Because at the end of the day, somebody pays, or we cut. There's only two alternatives. Yes?
One other item, do we need to take a look at the income requirements that people need to have for a threshold to maybe change the equation?
I think it all rises, though. All tides rise, right? If we're raising 22.5%, I want to see if all tides will rise.
I believe it was just on the house value, not just it wasn't the incomes.
That's what was presented to us.
I will check with Rick, but I believe, I was under the impression that it was only increasing your asset amount, or excuse me, your, yeah, the asset amounts.
Remember, we brought the income amount up.
We did bring the income, we did adjust
When
the
they
income
changed Social
amount.
Security, we brought the income up.
I just want to make sure that we're,
But what we do for an exemption is based on total assets, right?
Correct.
So all tides rise with total assets.
Right.
I just want to make sure that it all works mathematically.
It all
so-
has to come out in the public hearing, we have to have the questions.
Of course.
Yeah, we're not gonna solve it here.
Right.
Okay.
All right.
All right, you got another question?
No, the only other comment I wanted to make was that, to remind everyone, we do have a public hearing next Monday evening at 7 o'clock to have the public hearing on the charter amendment, which would redefine how we define the default budget going forward.
Okay.
That's a separate warrant article.
That is a separate warrant article.
Oh, yeah, another one.
Much to John's chagrin.
Add a couple more, yeah.
Okay, all right, so, next item is I'm gonna start moving through appointments. Where'd my agenda go? All right, Senior Resource Committee, I have available 1 3-year alternate, 1 3-year full-time. I have my wife, Mrs. Farrell, asking to be reappointed, and I have Mr. Palmer, Mr. Coleman, and did I have anyone else interested in the Senior Resource Committee? Those are the only 2 I captured.
What's the Linda Bates email? I didn't see that in the
So there's
packet.
an email in the packet.
First page.
Essentially, she's stepping down, but it's very long, drawn-out email. All right, so with that criteria, I am going to step down. So I'm turning the gavel over.
Okay, what say you, counsel?
Mr. Vice Chairman, I would like to make a motion to reappoint Sherry Farrell.
Wait a second.
Second,
To which position?
full-time.
Full-time.
The full-time, okay.
Okay. Hearing the motion, getting a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Okay, and Vice Chairman votes affirmative, so that's 4-0. Thank you very much, Sherry. You're reappointed as a full-time member. Would you like to come back? All right. All right. no
Mr.
problem.
Chairman, I'd like to make a motion to assign Robert Palmer to the Senior Resource Committee alternate.
Do I hear a second?
Second,
Okay, so I have a motion and a second. All those in favor of putting Robert in for the alternative position signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Okay, and chair votes affirmative. That's 4-0. Welcome. On the alternate position, Robert. Appreciate it. Thank you.
See the clerk to be sworn in. Okay, next committee, I have, I'm reassuming the chair, next committee, I have 1 3-year full-time, 2 3-year full-times. I have Mr. Noonan and Mr. Maxwell have asked to be reappointed. Mr. Browning is interested in the Conservation Commission. I'll accept nominations.
I will motion to have Mike Noonan and Bob Maxwell to be reappointed.
Second.
All those in favor, signify by saying aye.
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 Chair votes affirmative. Mr. Noonan and Mr. Maxwell, please see the clerk to be sworn in. And it was Mr. Palmer.
Yep, Senior Resource.
Okay. Heritage Commission. I have 2 3-year full-time positions. I have some rookie guy here named Art Rugg who's looking to be reappointed.
What a rookie.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a motion, we reappoint Art Rugg to the Heritage Commission.
Second.
All those in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
So just for clarification purposes, Mr. Rugg sent us an email, said he just has a little bit of experience. He said he's on the Historic Society for 35 years, the Selectmen and the Council for 12 years, the Heritage Historic Commission for 22 years. I think he left out the part about being on the Planning Board for 22 years or something like that. Just, that young guy over there in the corner. So that's for the Heritage Commission.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a motion that we consider that we replace Mr. Bianchi as having abandoned that position, and that we place an additional name in place of Mr. Bianchi.
So I believe that gentleman who's here tonight, John Mayo?
Yes.
Yes, he is interested in the Heritage Commission.
Mr. Chairman, I make a recommendation that we elect Mr. Mannon to the 1-year full-time position.
Second.
All those in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
So John C. the clerk to be sworn in. I'm going to ask for a motion for Mr. Bianchi's position has been surrendered due to non-attendance. I'll need a motion for that.
So moved.
Second.
All those, second, all those in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Chair votes affirmative. Thank you for your service, sir. Solid Waste Committee, I've got a 1-year, 3-year full-time appointment. Joyce Mueller wishes to be reappointed. Is Paul's position open? He just stepped down, right?
Yes, but he just stepped down, so
Yeah.
we have to post for that separately now. And then Richard Darvaux is also stepping down. His term is not up.
But he's resigned?
He's resigning, so that opens two
Okay.
positions that have to be posted after this
Well,
meeting.
Chairman, I'd like to make a motion to approve, reappoint Jocelyn Mueller as a full-time position for a 3-year term.
Second.
All those in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Chair votes affirmative. Ladies and gentlemen, I need a motion to accept the resignation of Richard Darner.
So moves, Chairman.
Second.
All those in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Chair votes affirmative. We'll be posting 2 full-time positions for solid waste, and I would recommend that we look at some of the folks who were here this evening to see if they'd be interested in solid waste and in participating in that area. If they're not, put on something else tonight. So, Planning Board.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a recommendation that we move Tony DeFrancisco to an alternate.
Can we just hold off for just 1 second?
Let me make a motion that we reappoint Chris Davies, Al Sypek, and Roger Filio.
Second.
So that's to the 2-3, so Davies to a 3-year, Sypek to a 3-year, Filio to an alternate.
Alternate 3-year.
Which one, 3 or 1?
3-year.
3-year. So, ladies and gentlemen, what I'm looking for is a motion to approve those 3 first.
So moves, Chairman.
Second.
All those in favor, signify by saying aye.
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 I will also look for a motion, it's in your packet, to accept the resignation of Peter Comerford.
So moves, Chairman.
Second.
All those in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Peter, thank you for your service.
To make a motion to appoint Tony DeFrancisco to the 1-year alternate position.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. All those in favor, signify by saying aye.
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 Aye, Mr. DeFrancisco, please see the clerk to be sworn in. Okay, ZBA. So what do we got here? So let's take Jackie Bernard first. She wishes to be reappointed to a 3-year full-time position. I'll accept the motion.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Jim Terabassi, we have not heard back from him yet. Has he been attending the meetings and is he active? Do we know?
I don't know.
It's not
Mr.
it.
Terabassi? He was at Leadership Londonderry, wasn't he? Was he
I
there?
don't think so.
Was he there the day I presented? All right, let's check with him and find out what the story is there.
Neil has emailed him too, and I don't know if he's heard back.
Okay, so if we don't hear from him by next Monday, we're going to just have him, we'll take a motion for him to have vacated the position due to absence. And please put that out.
I'd like to make a motion that we reappoint Bill Berendino to a 3-year full-time position.
So that's Jackie, and, okay, I'll take a second, please.
Second.
All those in favor, signify by saying aye.
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 Susan Brunel to for a 2-year position.
Is Bill's passes, right? You're doing them all at once.
Yeah.
I think
Yeah,
we need
Bill's
to do.
passed.
Okay.
Bill's passed.
Yep.
Susan
Susan
Brunel,
Brunel,
so
2-year.
moved.
Second.
Second.
All those in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Thank you, Suzanne. Brendan O'Brien for wishes to be reappointed as an alternate, but would be interested in a full-time position if it opens up. I have a full-time position open. Do we want to nominate him for 1 year?
We have a full-time.
We do. But we get the Terabassi
Yeah.
question.
I have, I mean, he can be an alternate if we haven't heard back from him.
Right. I'm good with that.
I say to play it safe, we do alternate for the time being.
Do an alternate. I would say Mr. O'Brien to an alternate.
Second. Oh, wait, we have to get a motion first.
I would just do the 1 year until we hear back from Mr. Terabassi. So it will do
Make a motion.
for the 1-year alternate
So
until we hear
moved.
back from Mr. Terabassi.
So move, Mr. Chairman.
All those in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Chair votes affirmative. I have another 1 year, 3-year alternate. I have two brave souls who are still sitting in the audience who are interested in ZBA.
I'd like to
Can I just
nominate
ask-
Chris Keeney, pronouncing that correctly? Kenny? For the 1 year, for the 1 3-year alternate?
Second.
All those in favor, signify by saying aye.
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 Chair votes affirmative. That's for the 3-year alternate. What does this mean down at the bottom, open alternate
That was,
position?
it was an open alternate, so it was a vacant position to be filled.
So there's another position?
So you appointed Brendan O'Brien to the 1-year alternate term, and then did Chris Kenny to the 3-year alternate was the open position.
Was the open position? Okay.
So we have what open now?
So
You just have to wait to hear back from Bill.
So John, if we hear back from Mr. Terabasi that he is, he's no longer interested and we move, Mr. Berendino to a full-time position, are you interested in the alternate? Okay, note that did you get that? Okay, good. All right. Moving on, Recreation Commission. Todd Ellis is asked to be, reappointed as an alternate. Do we
Chairman, I'd
have
like to
any-
make.
Do we know Todd
Yep,
Ellis?
I'd like to
He's
make a
good?
motion, I'd like to make a motion to approve the position as alternate for Todd Ellis. Have to get a second.
Second.
All those in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Is that all of our open positions for right now? Okay, the only one we didn't catch was Mr. Ted Coleman. Can you contact him and see if there's anything else that we have open? You know, because I think he would add a great amount of value to the community. He seems to have a lot of knowledge.
Keep in mind, too, that we still have we're going to have open positions on the Solid Waste Committee, so.
And Southern New Hampshire Planning Commission.
That might be something very good for him as well. He seems to be well versed in a number of areas. I'd love to see him get involved. All right, all folks who were nominated this evening, whether you were reappointed or whether you're new to the positions, you all have to be sworn in. You need to come to Town Hall, see the town clerk, and be sworn into your position prior to serving. Thank you very much for your service. Thank you for volunteering.
Chairman, I'd like to make a motion that we approve the December 9th, 2019 town council minutes.
Second? Oh, sorry.
Do you have a?
Mr. Chair, there are no minutes for December 9th.
It's gonna be next week because
So the minutes aren't ready? Okay, so let's not approve them yet.
I withdraw my motion.
Yeah, let's
Preemptively approve them.
It'll be in the
Let's,
newspaper.
I didn't see any, but I figured maybe I missed them. So let's withdraw that motion and let's move right along. Thank you for that. Liaison reports. Do I have anything new, for the council on liaison reports? Town manager report.
Mr. Chairman, this morning I received a notice from New Hampshire DES on the second addendum for the work plan of sampling of water supply wells for St. Gobain. This will be posted on our website tomorrow on the water quality study page, which is on link to it is on the home page. There's a considerable amount of more wells in Londonderry that are going to be tested this time around. So many of the folks who have signed up, I'm sure, are on this list. And again, this will be posted on our website tomorrow.
Would you also note to please contact whomever we need to contact, whether it be at DES or whomever else, to find out what the process is to go and to do an evaluation and testing of the aquifers in town.
Mm-hmm.
And if you don't get any response from anybody, ask our attorney to respond, asking a little bit more firmly.
Sure.
Maybe a lot more firmly.
You don't think I can be firm?
You get it, Kev?
It's not, it has nothing to do with whether you can do firm or not.
I know.
He's got this little piece of
Yeah,
paper
yeah.
that gives him a little bit more firmness.
Slightly.
So, Assistant Town Manager report. How's Leadership Londonderry going?
Leadership Londonderry is going well. We've got, our January session will be about Londonderry's environmental state, so it's timely.
Londonderry's environmental state.
Okay, anything else from the council this evening before a couple of quick announcements? Okay, a couple of quick things. One is we are within 90 days of the town elections. The other thing is that if you are interested in positions, they'll be starting to post them soon, and I believe it's the last 10 days of January are the sign-up period. Those will be posted as well. Another piece of information for the community, February 11th is primary day for presidential primary. Londonderry has secured the use of polling books, once again, to do electronic ballots at the polling place in order to move you more efficiently through the parking lot and through the gymnasium. We believe there will be 7,000 to 8,000 people voting that day. So, do try to, work out your times and try to stagger them. But once again, you'll be coming in, you'll have your license. There will not be any letters. You will go to the line that is open. You will get your ballot and you will go and vote, and we will try to transition you through the parking lot as fast as possible. So, and thanks to the school and the town moderator and the clerk's office and the town manager and everyone going to the Secretary of State's office and convincing them that this continues to be a good way. And as we always say, I think we're the ones leading the way on this. I'm not in public comment, sir. Is there anything else further for the council this evening? We have a public hearing on December 23rd. It will be a short meeting. Merry Christmas to all. Happy Hanukkah. Happy holidays.
One last thing, Mr.
Oh, there you go. They are. Yeah, Ebenezer's here.
Well, I just want to make sure that no one can say we didn't remind them enough times. Petition warrant articles. I have not received any petition warrant articles yet.
And when is the last day?
Well, I believe it's January the 14th, but I'm double checking on that right now. My computer will work here. But the big thing is I would tell people, do not wait until the last day to get these into us. It's January 14th is when they have to be received by. But we want to make sure if you're going to do one that, number one, it's written properly. So get it into me early so we can have the town attorney vet it first.
Which is at no charge.
Yep. And then secondly, we want to make sure you have the correct number of signatures of registered voters in town. That's the big thing. So,
Signatures.
Yes.
yes, and legible would be very helpful. So again, January 14th is the deadline for that.
In other words, have them spell their name with their signature.
And I'm really good at handwriting, but.
Is there anything further this evening?
Motion to adjourn?
Merry Christmas to all, and to all a good night.
Second that.
Second.